everybody, and welcome to a new episode of What the Field. I'm Emmeline, and today I'm joined by Juliette and Gonzalo, our co-founders of CrowdFarming.
Please don't forget, Moises and Gabriel, they are also co-founders, but we are very happy to be in the front line together with you in this podcast.
Yes, not present, Moises and Gabriel, your brother, but still, you're basically my two voices for today. And we're going to do something a little bit exceptional. Juliette already complained to me that we haven't invited any expert today. And this is for a very specific reason, because today I'm going to slip out of the role of CrowdFarming employee, and I'm going to slip into the role, or try to slip into the role, of one of our customers, or at least people that are interested in our company and have some serious questions. Try to be the voice of what we see and hear in social media, what reaches us through various channels. And the main topic, overarching all of these questions, is going to be the debate of whether it is better to buy purely locally or to buy from European farmers as CrowdFarming.
So sensitive topics.
And CrowdFarming does not say not to buy local. I don't want to start the debate, but I think it's important to remind it.
Let's just dive right in.
Okay.
Let's go. What happens in this podcast stays in this podcast, okay?
Yes. Let's go for it.
Let's go for it.
Nothing leaves this room or the internet. Okay, so Juliette, you're just dove right into it saying that we are not saying that people shouldn't buy locally. Yet, when they see an ad for Spanish avocados on Facebook, I see a lot of comments of people saying, why should we buy Spanish food? Our local German fruit is just as good. Or why not buy French apples instead?
Okay, so you want me to deep dive into the subject right now. So I think the first question, and it's maybe the most important point, is what is local? Because I think that's where there is a switch in the definition. And maybe in terms like you were saying about avocados, maybe if I'm French or German and I want to eat avocado, well, the closest they are is in Spain. So it might be the solution, the most local solution. So I think that's one of the reasons why here we could say that the avocado is local, for example.
Because it's the closest alternative.
It's the closest alternative, yes. Which doesn't mean then we can get to the question whether or not we should eat avocados if you're in France or Germany. But I mean, in that case, I think it's quite clear the closest alternative you have.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, the important question here is why are you supporting local? Oh, first of all, what means local for you? This is what Juliette was defining. It's a geographical point of view, or is a distance, a certain distance. But then the question, once you have defined how far do you accept local, then the next question is why are you supporting local? So are you supporting local because of CO2 emissions, because of the transport or the time that pass from the moment they harvest until the moment you consume it? Or do you support local because you want to support social economy, like local economy? Okay, so there are like two different opinions in these cases. No, there are some people supporting local because they want to support the economy of their local farmers, and there are some people supporting local because they want the food that don't travel too long.
Yes,
okay, and maybe there are people that combine both. No. So first of all, you cannot like solve the local thing. Just taking into account how far are you from the producer. I think it's also very important to calculate how is this food being transported, and also which method have you been using to transport it, how much time have you been transporting it. So all these important details affects in the real footprint of the food.
Okay, so let me give you a concrete example. You are a farmer yourself, so you cultivate, amongst many other things, oranges. Oranges is the product you started cultivating when you first turned into a farmer, right?
That's right.
And so you sell oranges mostly to Germans.
I started selling oranges to Germany. Yep.
Yes, exactly.
And to Austria.
Your farm is located in Valencia, Let's take a concrete example of you sending a box of oranges to someone who lives in Berlin, which is around 2,200 kilometers away from Valencia, where you are. So this generates around an equivalent of around 500 kilograms of CO2 emissions. How would you argument this? Like, how do you defend the creation, let's say, of this amount of CO2 just to sell oranges?
Okay, first of all, what is the alternative? I mean, people in Berlin don't grow things in Berlin. No, I mean, they have to. There is like, I don't know how much million of people living in Berlin, maybe 3.5 or something like that. So what alternatives they have to eat their oranges? Okay, normally the oranges that they can buy in the supermarket, they have been traveling for longer time. So the time that an orange and the average time that an orange travel in order to be in a supermarket in Berlin is around 3 weeks. Okay, and by us, the average time that an orange is traveling from the moment we pick them from the tree until the moment you receive them at home is between 3 to 4 days. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this means that whenever you are buying through our website, those oranges are hanging on a tree, and we just collect them. We just pick them from the tree once you place an order. So from the moment you place an order until the moment you receive, maybe it's 3, 4, 5 days, depending of when are you placing the order. But there is a huge difference because thanks to this less time that is traveling, we are not putting any wax. We are not using any preservatives to preserve the skin of the oranges. And in the other side of the food, I mean, in the other food supply chain, the traditional food supply chain with supermarkets, those oranges have been traveling for longer, so they need to put fungicides and they need to put wax in order that whenever they arrive in this supermarket, they have a good-looking skin so that consumers can buy it.
Okay.
Too long answer?
No, I think it's a good answer. Anything to add, Juliette?
No, I think and I think it was interesting, but maybe you did it on purpose. As you were saying, you're commenting, as some people might be on our model. You just discussed about transport. Mm-hmm. When we're discussing about carbon emissions in general for food production, there are many other things to take into account. And there were recent studies that were made that it's about food accounts for about 6 to 10% of the total emissions. So CrowdFarming on that is much more focused on being sustainable on the food production process, with, as Gonzalo was explaining, the idea of harvesting on demand with organic agriculture, even regenerative agriculture, and this is the biggest part normally of the emissions. So I think it's important also to remind that, even if we need to improve our logistics, and it's part of what we do also, to be more efficient when shipping oranges from Spain to Germany, as we were seeing.
Yeah, like transport perhaps is the most visible part, okay, but it's not the biggest or the most polluted part of the food supply chain.
What else pollutes in the food supply chain?
The production.
The production. What part exactly of the production?
Like I will see the production process in 2 phases. First of all, how are you producing? What methodology are you using to produce it? Is organic, certified organic? Is Demeter? Are you also introducing regenerative practices in your farm? So this is the first part. And second, and for me most interesting, is if we are really matching the offer and the demand. Because if you are cultivating and at the end this food, no one will consume this food, that is a problem that we have in the traditional food supply chain. This is causing, you all know that 1/3 of the food is lost or waste at some point of the food supply chain. No? Yeah. So, I mean, this means that in Europe we are producing 1/3 more that is needed.
I think even globally.
Okay, so what's the point of producing things that you are not going to consume?
It's actually you're actually polluting for nothing, let's say.
Sure.
You are using natural resources to produce your food, and at the end, no one will benefit from this food that you are producing.
And another thing that comes to mind, because, I mean, you also cultivate tomatoes, and tomatoes are this typical example of a food that is grown in greenhouses, right? So in countries like the Netherlands, surprisingly, they produce a lot of food like tomato, even though they have much less sun Then Spain, and you cultivate your tomatoes under the open sun, right?
Yeah, we call them sun tomatoes, no?
Sun-kissed tomato.
Yeah.
So they don't only taste better, right? So, but they also have, I guess, a lesser energy consumption related to it because you don't need to warm the greenhouse, right?
Especially in these times that the electricity is costing more and more. I mean, does it? I think it's just a question of asking ourselves, does it make sense to use electricity to grow things? Does it really make sense? Maybe in some cases it does make sense, but I think there are a lot of clear examples. One of them you mentioned in the Netherlands, that it does not make sense to cultivate under these greenhouses.
Yeah, or at least it's not sustainable.
Exactly.
Yes, and I think that's a good example, and I guess you were making it because it sounds more local, but then maybe it's polluting more. Yeah. So that's where we need to be careful.
You mentioned two things, and we only touched on one thing. So you mentioned that local can mean buying products from your vicinity, basically, no? Whether that is from your own country or from your neighboring village. I mean, people have already very different concepts here, what local means even on a national scale.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if you think of the European Union, maybe you live in France and you're close by to Spain. So maybe you're promoting French product, but in the end, the local ones might be more on the Spanish side than on the French side.
Or
so we have so many, or the Italian or the German side. I mean, we have so many cases. So it's interesting that we associate it many times to national things, when if you go to local as a definition of distance, it might not always be the case that it's your country that is the closest.
But the other point we didn't touch upon was the social point, or the economical perspective, because a lot of people, I feel, want to support their local economy, and this call to buy local or buy locally produced foods also comes from this need or want to support your own, whatever that means, your own farmers, your local farmers. What do you say to that?
I am a big fan. Nothing to add. I am a big fan of this.
I do think it makes sense. We need to support our farmers.
But then why don't you just sell German products to Germans?
I mean, if you have the possibility to buy German and with these German products, it's enough for you. It's okay. I mean,
it's okay. We allow you.
It's not that I'm allowed. I think I cannot say anything against this behavior.
I see that a lot in our ads, in our texts, in our communications we do, or crowdfarming does speak a lot of European farmers and basically encouraging Europeans to buy from Europeans, no? Aren't you not afraid of the political implications of this word? Because I feel that people are turning more and more to their nationalism, national pride, and don't see themselves necessarily as European, but see themselves as very French. Or now with Brexit, of course, someone from England, for example, probably won't consider themselves all too European anymore. I mean, for me, this EU or European debate is always very political.
Yeah. I think it's, for us at least, what we're trying to do, it's a question of geography. It's Europe in a generic term. We're not, we integrate Switzerland. It's not European Union, you know? Yeah. For us, there is no question about it. Just like the UK, it's Europe in our mindset. And we're doing it in terms of geography, not so much in terms of national or political aspect. It's just because, of course, we can sell maybe out of nowhere, we sell some Italian products. So we'll say, buy from Italian producers. But if we're promoting various types of clementines, we have clementines in Spain, we have clementines in Italy, we have clementines in France. So maybe what we're trying to say is you can buy clementines from Europe, you know, not from another continent, from Europe, and then it wouldn't make sense to do it like only nationally.
Yeah, the nationality of our farmers in the platform is just one of the things that you can choose. Maybe for you as a consumer, the most important part is the nationality. So I just want to buy from French farmers. But another part is, okay, I just want to buy because the farmer is a woman, or because the farmer is supporting renewable energy. So we are...
also many crowd farmers, as we call them, or customers, they're actually looking for agricultural technique and methodology. I want Demeter, I want organic, I want something different. So I think it's a big part of their decision process.
Exactly. So we don't want to choose for our customers. We are letting our customers to choose. The only thing that that we have the opportunity, thanks to these debates that we are creating internally, is to define where are the limits.
And where are the limits?
Nature gives us the limit. Our consciousness as consumer give us the limit. Our own experience building crowd farming is putting us the limit. So I don't think that the limit is a red line, a defined red line. We are defining the limits in crowd farming thanks to all the conversations we have with farmers, we have with our consumers, we have with all the people working for crowd farming. So thanks to these debates, we can establish new limits. I don't like to consider limits, no?
And I think it's very important that if we were to have a very clear limit, it wouldn't be very crowd farming like. Because in the end, what we're trying to do at crowd farming is to actually get every farmer to explain and present themselves and their projects as something different. Not just I'm selling oranges and they're organic, as you can see in the supermarket, but with the story, what they're doing, how they're doing it. And so this means that you need to be very flexible, right? Because you need to adapt to each situation. You need to go with the situation. And so it's a bit the same with this situation of where do you sell the product. If we were to have very clear limits, we wouldn't be that open-minded, and we wouldn't be promoting what we're trying to do with the farmers, that is to differentiate and to consider each case as particular. Because each farmer has a very concrete experience. He's living in a very concrete area with some kind of issues and other advantages. And it's not the same here than next door. So this is why also I think it's important for us that we see each topic as an independent one and not, okay, we have this limit and we're good with it.
So in crowd farming, we don't consider ourselves the one that have the power to define what is good or what is bad. And we don't want to just incorporate or invite in the platform just the farmers that we feel that they are doing everything correct. We want also to help farmers into their journey of being more organic, or into the journey of starting regenerative practice, or into the journey of receiving better prices because what they are doing. Like being organic doesn't mean that they are sustainable.
Yeah,
so,
that's a good point.
So we like to help the farmers in the journey of being more sustainable.
To go further in the end.
Well, you don't seem to have a limit when it comes to countries that you accept farmers from, because we do say that we want to, or the crowd farming says that it wants to support European agriculture, European farmers, but then again, you have coffee farmers from Colombia, you have cocoa farmers in the Philippines, so you even have a cocoa farmer in the Caribbean island of Grenada. So how do you justify that? Because this is transport from overseas, for example, no? To name one thing, one critical point.
Our focus is in the European market. Okay, we are completely focused. But when we started, we have the opportunity to get to know farmers. Some of them were my friends or Juliette friends that say, how cool is this crowd farming? And since we love chocolate and we love coffee, we invite them to the platform. It's as simple as that. Okay, it was just some rules that you can break at the beginning and that we were able to get to know the stories. Juliette went to Colombia, and I mean, we have the opportunity to visit these farmers. And there were some rules that we break at the beginning so that we can have our coffee farmer that provides coffee to our office.
So if I understand you correctly, it is your goal in the future to only admit European farmers and not to be able to have the biggest possible product palette, because coffee and cocoa you're not able to cultivate these types of crops in Europe. So you are not trying to get basically crops that are not cultivable or that you cannot cultivate in Europe.
The more and more we learn,
overseas.
Where are our limitations. In order to provide an excellent service to farmer, we need to have local presence. And see, if we don't have local teams and we don't have the budget now to have local teams of farmers, of agronomists in these regions. Yeah, we call them farmer hunters. One of the things that I have learned in 5 years history of crowd farming is to focus. Okay, in order to create a bond impact, or in order to be able to guide a bigger team, you need to establish your priorities and be very, very focused in what is your top goals. Are you happy with my answer?
Yes, I'm really happy. And I'm really happy about your learning. It's wonderful.
Juliette is part of this.
I think it's definitely we're focusing very clearly, but we're open to new farmers. And I have to say also that we have very clear criteria for farmers from abroad. Just as we have very clear criteria for the European Union, but for example, in terms of social issues or how do they work with their workers. Actually, in Europe, we're protected by the European law, so it's easier for us. For outside, we're trying to work with farmers that work with fair trade conditions and all of that. So it's also another, let's say, another rule that we have, even if we don't like limits. And I think we're open to that as long as Gonzalo was saying, that we can give them the support that is needed and that we can follow up with them and that they can grow with us, because otherwise it doesn't make sense.
All the farmers that are in the platform, they receive periodic visits from our agronomists, our farmer hunters. And not just to audit them, it's also to help them. I mean, we share a lot of knowledge between farmers. We tell them what we have seen that it works in, for example, in terms of organic practice or regenerative practice. We tell them, okay, this is working in this farm, this thing is not working, or this thing costs more or less this thing. Why don't you try to do this thing? So this is one of the main benefits that farmers selling through crowd farming they have. Yeah. Apart of selling for a better price, they also have the support of an agronomist.
Yeah, so you were mentioning this earlier, right? That you have teams of agronomists on the ground. Maybe you could explain a little bit the structure, because as far as I am aware, we're sitting here in Madrid, right? A capital, no farmers around. So how does that work? Like, how local are you in the countries you work in?
Okay, so we're based in Madrid as the team globally, but then as Gonzalo was explaining, we are very close to our farmers, and to be close to the farmers you need to be close to them physically. That's the truth that we've learned also during the 5 years. So in the countries where we have most farmers, we have a locally based team. That would be Spain, of course, but Spain not in Madrid. As you were saying, there are no farmers here, but in Valencia, in Malaga, wherever we have a huge concentration of farmers. Then we have people in France, we have people in Italy, and we have people in Germany. All these people, their work is actually to be with the farmers, to help them, as Gonzalo was explaining, in their new developments, and to help them also in the direct sale to end consumers, because it's something very new, and it seems easy, but it's not that easy for them to switch from traditional supply chain system to this system. So that's what we do, and that's where we have presence. And we hope if we manage to grow and to open maybe new countries. I mean, that would be wonderful, and to be closer to more farmers.
That was actually going to be my next question.
Maybe in the UK?
Yes, exactly.
Maybe UK. Exactly, because this is one of the questions we receive quite a lot. Why don't you have Dutch farmers? Why don't you have Swiss farmers? Why don't you have UK farmers?
If we were just a digital solution, it will be much easier. But we have decided not to be just a digital solution for farmers. We have decided to be partners with farmers. We have decided to give local service, or to offer local service to farmers, to understand their culture, to understand their challenge. And this is why we need to build local teams in each country. And our pocket nowadays is not so deep, so we need to wait until we have the opportunity to develop more teams in more countries.
Okay, so if a UK farmer would come up to you tomorrow, you would have to turn him down on the grounds of not having local presence?
It depends. It really depends. As we were saying, we don't put limits, and that's why we're about to enter our first Greek farmer. So, I mean, and we don't have a team in Greece, so everything is possible. But it's of course, it's much easier if you're you're in Germany, in France, or in Italy or Spain to enter the platform, of course, because we're closer to you, so we can give you a better service. And it's also a question of what the farmers, you were talking about the fact that farmers request the entry at CrowdFarming. It's true, we have this option on the website, and we receive requests every day. So from that also we see a bit where we should go. Because if there are many farmers from the UK, we're mentioning the UK, for example, it's the case, well, maybe that's the next destination we want to go to. Going with, of course, the end consumer asking for national products.
Yeah. Going back to that, I know I'm being super annoying with this, but I do see every time we have an exotics campaign, for example, mango season, right? So we do mango campaigns because we grow mangoes in Malaga in Spain. And there's always several comments from people saying, but why do we need to be eating mangoes? Like, why not just grow something that is truly a European, that's not an imported crop? Because after all, I mean, a lot of those exotic crops, they need a lot of water. So we always enter the water discussion with people, but this is maybe for another podcast. But
we already record a podcast about water resources in tropical fruits.
Yes, we did with a scientist.
Yeah, that's fine.
So go to find this answer. Go to the one with the scientist.
This is exactly. It's I think about avocados specifically because they do need more water than mangoes, for example. But coming back to this question, like, what do you say to people that ask you why you advertise mangoes? Why not stick to traditional European foods?
What is traditional?
Exactly. I was about to ask because we've been changing.
I don't know. I'm just repeating the question.
No, well, I will answer with another question. I mean, what is traditional food?
Okay, apples.
Europe, no?
Yeah, but why apples and oranges? Maybe there are, but they came from China, and then tomatoes and potatoes. Yeah. They're
tomatoes that were coming from South America, no?
Yeah.
But to be fair, they came quite a long time ago, and they're very
well established.
So now the mango cultivation in Europe is quite new, no? It started like maybe 20, 30 years ago, I guess.
Yeah, again, I think you should be aware about the climate that you have in your farm, what resources you have, and you can regenerate every season. How much water do you need to use, and how much water could be regenerated in your aquifers, no? Underwater resources.
Under the underground water resources. I would say, I don't know.
Okay.
So depending on this, then the creativity of the farmer could decide having these limitations in their mind. Okay, sometimes if you cultivate the same that your neighbor farmers are doing, then maybe you are cultivating too much of just one product, no? And there is not enough market for this product. So if you respect the limits that that the local nature gives to us, you can be as creative as you want.
Is this something you look out for when you choose whether or not a farmer can sell their products through crowdfarming? Do you check whether the crop they're cultivating is actually apt for their conditions, like the water resources and all of that they have?
I mean, not to be honest, we don't calculate how much water they have underground. It's something that it's very interesting for us, but nowadays we are not doing this kind of audit.
We'd love to do it, but it's very complex. We're actually discussing about doing it in the coming years.
So it's more trust-based at the moment.
Not everything. Not everything. No. I mean, we ask for information and we go, like I said, a lot of times to the farms of the farmer to make some audits, but specifically the audit of how much water is this farm regenerating, let's say, every season, is something that we would love to, but we are not doing this. We are doing we are analyzing pesticides, synthetic pesticides. We are analyzing this by ourselves. It's not that we are just asking for them, please send me an analysis of your fruit or of your plants. We are doing this with our farmer hunters.
Apart from the organic label, I mean, we don't just follow this. We do our own checks.
So we do our own checks. But the one about water, not yet.
And then bear in mind, I think it's very important that we're not sending anyone to work with the farmers. We're sending agronomists. I mean, they're experts, so they see things and they actually have knowledge to, from their visit at the farm, decide on so many aspects. The idea is to support them into being more sustainable.
Let's talk about the customer side. Your customers are all Europeans, because crowd farming doesn't sell outside of Europe. It does sell outside of the European Union, but not outside of European borders. How come?
Citizens living in Europe.
Citizens living, yeah, okay, that's a good point. How come we don't sell to the USA, for example?
Well, we started in Europe. There is a lot of things happening in Europe. We feel that there is really interesting and huge revolution happening at the start and at the end of the food supply chain in Europe. The more and more European farmers or farmers living in Europe are looking for ways to sell directly to end consumers, and consumers are looking for ways to buy in from farmers. This is something that I think is in our blood. No? I mean, people living in Europe like to buy from farmers. And
not supermarkets.
Well, there are some people don't feel so good buying supermarkets because they don't know where the fruit come from, how much the farmer is receiving from the price that they are paying, how long and for how long, and what is the distance that this food has been traveling. So there are a lot of things that supermarket cannot provide you, and at the end of the day, once you buy them in supermarket, you don't feel like really, really good, no? And I think these kind of people that don't feel so good is the one demanding direct sales channels, and this is what we are trying to build.
Mm-hmm. But with the rise of, as we mentioned earlier, this nationalism, you could say, and this feeling of, okay, I need to be supporting my own people or my own farmers, is it not a tough sell to be advertising, for example, Spanish products to the French? Juliette, you as a French person.
So it depends. France is, as we say, is the exception. So I think it's, of course, don't try to sell camembert from Spain to French people. It wouldn't make sense, okay?
Yeah.
And we're not doing that. But that being said, I think French people love Spanish mangoes. So it really
because
depends.
They don't have them in France.
Exactly. We don't have it in France. And I mean, they're our neighbors and they're close by and they're really good. So I think it depends on the product. But it's France and it's true for so many things. For example, don't try to sell citrus fruits in Italy from Spain, because they will tell you the same. Look, we have our own and it's really great. So I think it's a question also of on this being aware of that. And I think it makes perfectly sense. It's what we were saying with Gonzalo. I mean, we're not against that. On the contrary. So it's just a question of adapting to that. There is something about Europe that is quite wonderful. It's our history and the fact that we have very, very concrete local specialties that are protected with the DOP or PDO, I think in English, IGP. And so that's also what we're selling through crowd farming. And maybe you want this type of cheese and it's only Manchego and it's only made in Spain. So you're going to buy it from Spain because it's this culture you're trying to support and this type of farming. Just like you have, I don't know, Parmigiano in Italy. You're not going to take it from elsewhere than Italy, right? Yeah. So I think it's something very beautiful that we have. And that's where people usually are very open-minded because they like to see tradition and they like to get those products.
And be reminded of their holidays in Italy or France or Spain.
Some of the news that appears sometimes in some newspapers and it makes me very sad is that when some journalist defines that, okay, because of the Spanish farmers are selling for a very low prices, then they are making suffer the French farmers.
Or the Italian farmers.
Is this the responsibility of the Spanish farmer or is the responsibility of the French supermarket that is paying this to the Spanish farmer and that is buying Spanish farmers? So I think
but I think here it's a bit more complex, Gonzalo, because it's also linked to prices in general in the country, what are the labor laws, and so it might be because salaries are indeed lower in Spain, you can sell for lower price. I mean, there we enter a bit into, and especially in the European Union, into all the complexity of being together on a free trade area with not exactly the same rule, just like for VAT, right? So there are countries where you have VAT very high and other for the same product, and we're talking about free trade. So it's not that easy. But yes, it's true that I agree with you that it's a sad news in the sense that it's trying to blame someone for exactly to divide when it could actually I think there is one thing that is true in all Europe is that farmers are usually suffering from the traditional supply chain system. It's not working. It's broken for all of them. So it's not like anyone is really benefiting from it.
And I think that we have to see the environmental impact as a global thing, not as a local thing. Whatever a farmer is doing in Spain and is the way this farmer is cultivating is causing environmental problems in Sweden or in Germany or in France. So we are promoting a more sustainable, organic and regenerative farming in Europe as a whole.
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
And it's already a good ambition. I think we have work.
Emissions know no borders, right?
Yeah, even more than Europe, no?
Yeah. Okay.
Step by step.
So before we end this podcast, maybe to get into your personal perspective a little more. So Gonzalo, you're Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Juliette, you're French. But do you feel... Okay, Juliette has been living for many years in Spain now. You've lived in other countries before. So when people ask you where you're from or what, how do you identify? Do you identify as European or as French or what would you say?
That's a very tricky question. I would say, right, of course I cannot not feel European. I mean, even us sitting down here and working at CrowdFarming, I think it would be impossible for me not to feel European. But I have to say I feel French. And I think it's just like, when with your friends, when you get to know them better, the more you get to know people, the more you see the differences, also in a good way. Like it's actually something that brings more value to your life. So the more I know Austrian people, the more I know Spanish people, I get also something from them to see my difference as a French person and how I grew up and the culture I've been brought in. So... I think it's very interesting, but I do feel French. I have to say so.
And you, Gonzalo? Do you feel Spanish? Do you feel European?
I was born in Madrid. I spent a lot of time in Valencia. Then I studied also in Grenzmünster, in the Nähe von Linz, in Austria. Then I study also in Berlin. So this is why I feel a son of the nature.
I love that answer. And what have you learned? What is your personal takeaway, each of you, from working with such an international team? Because CrowdFarming has how many nationalities within their employees?
I think now we are 16 nationalities.
16 so
different nationalities.
Employees from 16 different nationalities. Employees that are working on the ground with farmers from Italy, France, Germany, Austria, Spain, and several other countries. So it's a very international environment. What have you learned as a company founder from this type of environment?
A lot of things, but I will summarize this as having an open mind makes you more happy. I mean, having an open mind and listen to more people and really discuss about these topics in a transparent way, listen to everyone, makes your mind more open. And being an open-minder is the right way to be more happy in life, no?
So I completely agree with what Gonzalo said. So it's difficult to not say that. I would also say that it's very funny because in the end, I think you see that cliches are not so true, and then that cliches are very true sometimes. So we can laugh about it all together. I think that's also the good thing. I would say it's always a very good opportunity to grow together.
Like Juliette was saying, no, being interviewed by an Austrian woman, okay, that was born in France, and
German parents.
So it's a good mix, no?
Yeah, it is indeed.
And we all have the same vision in terms of how Europe should go in terms of food supply chain. So this is really good.
Gonzalo, Juliette, one last chance to comment on people's statements of, but it's never going to be sustainable to buy a product that is not local. And by local, they mean geographical vicinity.
Well, I think it's very interesting as a comment, and we need to thank them because it's actually make us think and try to improve in the way we can. When we comment, we have a team actually answering and trying to understand where does the question come from? What is the information the person is actually trying to give us with that? And we've been improving so many things thanks to that. So I think it's just positive. Let's have a debate and let's improve together.
I like that answer, Juliette. And Gonzalo,
Yeah.
anything to add? You need to add something. Come on now. I know you don't think exactly the same way as Juliette.
I will just say that, okay, apart of commenting, go out and discuss with friends and try to find more sources, scientific sources, live experience by your own without like just spreading the comments that you read somewhere in the social media.
Or even newspapers, I mean.
Yeah.
Let's not get
verify the source of your newspapers, no? Yeah.
Yeah, verify the
But
sources.
I think the answer of Juliette was perfect.
Yes.
In this case.
I agree. So thank you very much, Gonzalo, Juliette. And thanks for our audience for being with us for another episode and taking this field trip into the world of local versus European from the crowd farming perspective.
One last question. You are German, Juliette is French, I'm Spanish, but we are recording in English. So next podcast auf Deutsch?
That would be wonderful.
I mean, they would wonder probably our French friends and clients would not take this very well.
Well, why not? You can do a French one afterwards.
The pressure is
Can we
on.
say bye-bye in our own languages?
Of course.
So, muchas gracias a todos los que nos habéis escuchado. Y nada, gracias por escucharlo en inglés. Y esperemos que pronto tengamos la capacidad de hacerlo en más idiomas.
Et donc, merci beaucoup à tout le monde de nous avoir écoutés et à très bientôt pour un podcast en français avec Emmeline. C'est ce qui est accordé.
Vielen Dank an unsere Zuhörer und bis zum nächsten Mal.
Ciao.